Welcome everyone to the second chapter, study of the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras called Sādhana Pādaḥ. We shall study this over the next 8 weeks. So most of you were in the study of the first chapter of the Yoga Sutras, and I will just share what we studied overview. We just finished it last week, but I will just go over and give an overview. So the first chapter, as I said many times, it is like an overview chapter, and the style in which the Yoga Sutras is written is such that the first chapter is for advanced students so that they don't have to read the rest of the Yoga Sutras. Sutras are aphorisms, they're condensed essence of a topic. This was a popular style that was used in those times. So there were sutras on all 6 darshanas. Remember, we talked about the Shad darshanas, the 6 darshanas. I told you they were like sisters. So Sankhya is essentially they consider to be the one of the oldest, or either Sankhya or Purva Mīmamsa, we don't know. Sankhya is certainly very old, and Sankhya and Yoga are like sister philosophies. Sankhya is the theory, Yoga is the practice. And therefore, these were essentially condensed version, which a knowledgeable person can elaborate to the common populace. So that was the style of the sutras. So in the first chapter, Patanjali really didn't talk much about the philosophy, and that he's going to do in the second chapter. Why all this yoga? What's the purpose of all that he's going to establish? And he's also going to do that in the 4th chapter. In the first chapter, Patanjali talked about the mind and the fluctuations, the vrittis, very systematically. Remember, it's a scientific document. So Patanjali is going about it very systematically. And then he talks about the nature of the yoga practice, introduction to the 2 types of samadhis. The mind needs an anchor, sampragnata, without an anchor, sampragnata. Loosely, they are also termed sabija, with a seed of focus, and nirbija, without a seed of focus. Then the only thing that he talks about in more detail, which you can say is philosophy, the rest are all practice. This is the concept of Īśvara, which is used, Īśvara loosely you can translate as God, but the concept of God is different in the Sanatana Dharma as compared to the Abrahamic religions. So you shouldn't get confused. God is not like strictly as you view it as a creator. So Īśvara is a special Purusha which you can use as an anchor. Then Patanjali talks about obstacles to focusing the mind and the various anchors to use. And then he goes into details on the various types of samadhi. So that is the first chapter. Now, the second chapter, the way Patanjali has organized, this is a very big chapter, and Patanjali is organized into 2 parts. The first part, he lays the foundation for Ashtanga Yoga. Okay, and Ashtanga Yoga, it literally the 8 portions, the 8 parts of yoga, or 8 anga means part. People also use it as in the context of the body. It means different parts of the body. They use it as limbs, which is anga just means a portion. Limb is not strictly the right word, but let's just say 8 limbs of yoga, the 8 parts of yoga. Foundation for Ashtanga Yoga. Second portion is the Ashtanga Yoga itself. So Patanjali will talk about the first 5. Ashta means 8. So there are 8 parts of yoga, and the first 4 are called the Bahiranga Sadhana, external practices, and the 5th one is the transition, pratyahara, from external going inward. And you're reining the senses in pratyahara. It is weaning away of the food for the senses by turning the senses inward. Whenever the senses see all these sense objects, nice smell, nice sight, the mind tends to run after that. So it's weaning away the food, remove the food for the senses, all these things by tuning inward, by finding these nice sensations inward that the mind can focus on. So that is pratyahara. And then the last three, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, which I've already talked about, those he's going to discuss in the third chapter on siddhis. Okay, so the first portion is the foundation for Ashtanga Yoga. That Patanjali is going to say why Ashtanga Yoga, and he's going to first talk about. I will go over the essence of the Sādhana Pādaḥ, why he's doing this. This is the most important chapter on practice. It is the most popular chapter. It is a relatively easy chapter to understand. And Patanjali is going to talk about the yoga for the general populace. We'll see what it is. Then he's going to talk about kleshas. Remember the deep subliminal imprints that cause all these things to bubble up, the samskaras. And there are all these 5 types of bad imprints. These are called kleshas. It is a root cause of our suffering, Patanjali is going to say. And this doesn't just stop in this lifetime. It continues across lifetimes due to this samskaras imprints. Then the most important portion here, this is the technical portion. He is going to talk about the relationship of the Purusha. Remember, tada drashtuhu swarupe vastanam. Patanjali introduced the drashta, the seer. That is the real you. Okay, and it is just of the state of pure consciousness and bliss. When you know that nature, you're happy. But the problem occurs when we associate ourselves with the imperfect Prakriti and think that is what we are. It is like a cloth we wear, like a sweater or a shirt. And when we think we are this sweater, if the sweater is torn, you get upset, you don't look good, but you definitely look good, irrespective of whether you're wearing a torn sweater or not. So that is what he's going to talk about. And then he's going to talk a little bit about liberation. What happens when the Purusha, in this entity, the nature of the Purusha is known. Okay, so and this is the Ashtanga Yoga. Okay, now let's jump in to the foundation for Ashtanga Yoga. First portion, I'll give you the essence of the Sādhana Pādaḥ. It can be summarized in just 2 sutras or 3 sutras. The essence of the Sādhana Pādaḥ is in the 17th sutra. Patanjali says, drashtu drishyayo sanyogo heya hetuhu. Heya hetuhu means that which is to be avoided, the cause that is to be avoided. Heyam, that which is the suffering that is to be avoided. Hetuhu is the cause. The cause of the avoidable suffering is drashtu drishyayo samyogaha. Drashta is the seer. Drishyam, that which is seen. Therefore, the cause of the avoidable suffering is the identification of the drashta with the drishyam. As I said, Sutra has these characteristics. So there are some rules you have to follow, about 9 or 10 rules. One of them is Saravat. It is the essence of a topic. Vishvato Mukham, all encompassing. So look at how it is written. Very carefully chosen words. Drashtu drishyayo samyogo heya hetuhu. Avoidable suffering. Okay, the heyam, it is not something that we have to live with. That's clearly Patanjali says it is unnecessary that we are suffering because of our wrong identification. So the cause of the avoidable suffering is the identification of the drashta, that is the real you, the drishyam, that which is seen, the material world, including our bodies. Liberation is simply the realization that the knower and the known are 2 different categories. Suffering ceases the moment you realize I am the witness of the pain, not the owner of the pain. This brings a lot of peace of mind for us. Okay, so for those who have attended one of the story classes, I believe it's a Puranjana Upakyanam, where we saw the story of Puranjana and um, Avijñāta. So there I told this story of Chitraketu. This comes in the Bhagavata Purana. So a lot of the stories we're going to see, they're either from Ramayana, Mahabharata, or the Bhagavata Purana. So the Bhagavata Puranam is essentially, Bhagavatam means the Bhakta, story of the Bhaktas. So it has all the story of people who were devotees of Vishnu. The legend goes that Vyasa, if there's one person who has written pretty much most of the Puranas, it is Veda Vyasa. So Veda Vyasa is considered a incarnation of Vishnu. Vyasaya Vishnu Rupaya Vyasa. Vyasa is a Rupa of Vishnu. Vishnu Rupaya, they're all one, the same. And therefore, Vyasa, he wrote all the Puranas, and he wrote Mahabharata. But after that, he was still unhappy. At that time, Narada, the divine celestial sage, came to him and told him, okay, write about all the bhaktas, the devotees, and then you will, your sense of dissatisfaction will be removed. So that is why Vyasa wrote Bhagavata Purana. So in the Bhagavata Puranam, there is this famous story of Chitraketu. It is a profound and somewhat shocking story illustrating how this association with Prakriti creates suffering and how wisdom breaks it. So this is the context. King Chitraketu, he had everything. He had wealth, many wives, and beautiful queens, and he had a lot of power. But he was miserable because he had no son. So this boy, it made him feel, the description is like a garland of flowers on a hungry man. A beautiful, nice smelling flowers, but what use it is to a hungry man. So then one day, sage Angira Muni, he visited the king and he saw the distress of the kings. Therefore, he performed a yajna. Yajna means a sacrificial. He chants a lot of prayers before the fire, and he performed a yajna, and he, from the remnants, so they offer food like different things, and they offer it as a propitiation for the higher power, for the gods, and all that. And he gave the remnants to the king's favorite queen, Kritadyuti. Okay, and both the but he warned this. So this is your karma. You cannot escape your karma. Since you really want a son, you will get a son. That the son born from this yajna will be both the cause, it will be a blessing, cause of joy, and it will also be a cause of sorrow. That you cannot, it's in your karma, you cannot escape that. So joy is harsha, jubilation, and then shoka is sadness, lamentation. So the child was named Harsha Shoka. So a child was born, he was ecstatic. His identity merged completely with the child, and he thought, I am the boy's father. This boy is my happiness. Then what happens? So he can't escape karma. There was jealousy between the other wives. Oh, she had so many queens. They, in their jealousy, poisoned the infant. The child died. Then Chitrakestu's suffering was boundless. He collapsed, weeping, unable to accept that his son had died. Okay, and then Angiras again comes back. This time he comes with Narada Muni. So to teach the king the truth of the distinction between the body and the mind complex and the Purusha, that is the real us, they use their mystic powers to call the Jiva, the Sukshma Shariram. So what happens after the body? The body is just a Sthula Shariram. And inside the body, there's a Sukshma Shariram. Sukshma Shariram consists of the mind, senses, prana, everything. Once the body dies, Sukshma Shariram goes away like a jiva, it travels to another body, takes abode there. And this happens till there is the realization that, so there are all these imprints, right? And once that's the samskaras, once the realization happens that all this is just inert things, then the whole jiva dissolves. So Patanjali is going to talk about in the 4th chapter. We got a small, when there's all the imprints are gone, the gunas have no purpose for the Purusha. Purusha knows it's in the mind-body complex, the knower knows its true nature as the Purusha. All this is just a reflection causing all these problems. So once that is known, the entire mind-body complex dissolves. There's no need for that. So the jiva. So Narada calls the jiva. So jiva is wandering, looking for another body. But Narada Muni, with his mystic powers, he calls the jiva. The jiva again enters the child's body. Now it is the jiva that is speaking. And look at the profound things that the jiva says. So the jiva is now talking, and in the jiva, so the child wakes up. So when Narada Muni summoned the jiva, then Chitraketu was overjoyed. My son, I'm your father. Come. The jiva is looking like this, like dazed. So like the jiva woke up from a sleep, and then the Chitraketu says, my son, I'm your father. Come to me. Come to me. The reawakened jiva looked at the king coldly and spoke words of pure Sankhya philosophy. In the cycle of births and deaths, I have rotated through millions of, not just human bodies, through species. I've had millions of fathers and mothers. Which father are you referring to? You are just a temporary acquaintance in a long journey. I am not your son. You're not my father. These are just roles we played in a play. Now the play is over. So, and then the jiva again left the body of the child. So the lessons king then understood the real lesson. It looks harsh, but this is the reality. Because of his identification and the loss, he is suffering. But when he knows the truth, the sense of calm pervades him. So some summary is that suffering is like watching a movie and thinking you are the character. Let's say a character is getting shot. You are the character getting shot. Yoga is realizing you are the one sitting in the theater. So this is the story of King Chitraketu from Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam has many of these beautiful stories. So this is Rishi Angira. Okay, so the Shri Jiva Uvacha Kasmin Janmanjami Makyam Pitarau Mata Bhavan Karma Bir Brahmyana Brahmyamanasya Devatir Yan Naradishu. In which birth were these two, my father and mother? I have had millions of parents in my journey through various species. And relationships are like travelers meeting at a riverbank, temporary and fleeting. So there is Purusha and there is Prakriti. Purusha is you, the pure consciousness. And then there's entity called the mind, body, senses, objects in the world, other bodies. So these two are completely different. The problem occurs when we mix all these things up. So the Purusha, pure consciousness. Sometimes people describe this thing as reflecting of a mirror or going through a lens. So it's like the mind we saw, like Sheena Vritter Abhijatasya Mane. The mind is like a pure crystal. Whatever you bring to its proximity, it looks like that. Remember, we saw that in the first chapter. When you bring a blue clock next to a crystal, the crystal looks blue. So the crystal, it just it shines because of the light of the consciousness. It looks like the mind has come alive. and then it passes the light on to the senses, and through the senses to the body. So it successively, the entire body till the tips of the fingers becomes sentient. What causes the wrong identification? This is the important thing. Kleshas, afflictions, cause this wrong identifications. 5 types of kleshas. Kleshas are the root cause for the leftover desires that prompt actions resulting in certain experiences in this or other lifetimes. Beautiful shloka or sutra. Kleshamula karmashayo drishta drishta janma vedaniyaha. So especially in the South Indian languages, they use vedana as some kind of mental, like, anxiety, annoyance, but vedana just means an experience. Kleshas are the root cause for all these leftover desires that prompt actions resulting in certain experiences in this or other lifetimes. Karmashaya is like the leftover desires or the seeds, something that's wanting to sprout. Drishta, adrishta means seen and unseen. This is beautiful. Look at the words he's using. Drishta, adrishta, janma vedaniyaha. That is seen, unseen life experiences. Janma is life. Vedaniyaha means experience. So seen, unseen life experiences. So what are seen and unseen life experiences? Anybody wants to say? What is meant by unseen life experience? Amy, Anjana, Anu, Mimi, Sumitra. Anybody wants to say?
Anna, unseen life experiences, is it something that we experience in our dream?
No, it refers to the next, other life, past, future life experiences. Drishta, adrishta, it cannot be seen, but it's going to happen. Drishta, adrishta janma vedaniya. So all these cause the kleshas, not just in this lifetime, but in future lifetimes too. How can we eliminate the kleshas? So this is the third sutra. Yoganganushtat ashuddhikshaye jnanadiptir avivekagyate. By the practice of the yoga anga, practice of the limbs or the parts of yoga, anushtana means following with discipline. Ashuddhikshaye, impurities are removed. Ashuddhi means impurities are destroyed. Shayam means destroyed. Jnana diptihi means the lamp of wisdom is left. Aviveka kyate, which leads to discriminative direct knowledge. So these 3 summarize the entire chapter. And we're going to look at the kleshas. Remember this picture? The 5 kleshas we are going to see. These cause the external problems. Antarayaha, vyadhistyana samshaya pramadalasya virati pranti darshanalapta bhumikatva anavastitatvani chitta vikshepaste antarayaha. So the vyadi, the disease, dullness, doubt, carelessness, laziness, craving, delusion, slipping the ground that has been attained, achieving and then slipping back, instability, all these things, or non-attainment. All of the bhumikatva is non-attainment and then slipping what you attained. So these are the antaraya, obstacles for the mind, and these come from the deeply hidden kleshas, and we'll see the 5 kleshas. Okay, now Patanjali talks about yoga for the general populace. Let's say you're a very busy person, you have family to raise, which most of us are in that situation. Patanjali gives a subset. Okay, so remember in the 22nd sutra of the first chapter, Patanjali says, Mridu madhyadi matratva tatopi visheshaha. Patanjali describes 3 types of yoga practices based on the level of effort. And he says, Tivra samveganam asannaha This is what Amy was saying last class. You really liked the sutra. So tīvra samvegana means with great enthusiasm you do. Samvegam here means, vegam literally means speed. Here samvegam means enthusiasm. Tīvra samveganam, it's intense enthusiasm if you approach. Asanaha, it comes to the proximity very quickly. So the advanced practice is in chapter 1. Patanjali describes Samadhi Yoga or the Raja Yoga, the last sutras that we saw, covering the different samadhis, the sampragnata and the asampragnata, or the nirbija samadhi. So this is the various states of samadhi. That is the advanced royal path, Raja Yoga. Then the middle level of practice is the Ashtanga Yoga, the full gamut. Then, because for advanced students, they don't need to focus so much. It's important. It's rooted in them, yama, niyama, but we have to work a little hard to discipline. For all the discipline, eating less, all these are part of yoga. Natyashnatastu yogosti nachaikantam anashnatah nachati swapnashilasya jagrato naiva charjuna. Yoga doesn't come to one who eats too much or eats too little. It doesn't come to one who sleeps too much or doesn't sleep at all. So both extremes are not good. Middle path is yoga. It's what Buddha also found out. Mid-level practice is called Ashtanga Yoga. Then the entry-level practice is Kriyā Yoga. Yoga of, it's literally called yoga of action. And Patanjali just gives 3 things. Depending on the intensity of the practice, success in samadhi, that's the end goal of all yoga. The mind, which is calm and can see its own reflection, the reflection of the Purusha well. Samadhi comes quickly or slowly. So Kriyā Yoga, the yoga of action, yoga for the lay person. First sutra. Tapas Svādhyāyas Īśvara-praṇidhānāni Kriyā Yoga. Kriyā Yoga is tapaha, austerity. Most important thing. Literally means heat. The word tap means heat. When you have austerity, it destroys the body's impurities. Literally, one tapas is fasting. It's a great form of tapas. Tapas, the way A.G. Mohan is a student of Krishnamacharya, he defines this as how Krishnamacharya taught him, is a sukatyagaha, where you are giving up the base mundane pleasures. Eating is nice for bigger pleasures, which you don't see easily, but you know in different ways. You know that when you do all this, certain things are achieved. So when you fast, the impurities of the body, because there is agni in the body, all you constantly keep dumping on a fire. The fire cannot burn. It's a whole bunch of junk there. It burns weakly. So let the fire shine and remove all the dirt. That is what the Jatara Agni shines when you fast. Tapaha, austerity. And in fact, in the Bhagavatam, it says, so creation is explained, right? Remember last class, in the first chapter towards the end, we saw about the creation, the alinga, which is the pradhana or the prakriti in the unmanifested state, and then slowly from that everything, the subtle matter comes, and then the gross matter, all that. So this is symbolically this intellect. Amy correctly said the intellect is symbolized by Brahma. So Brahma is born, it's only darkness. He was just floating around, he couldn't see anything, he was so scared. Then he hears the word, the 16th syllable and the 13th syllable, that's how it says, ta, and that, focus on that. And then Brahma meditated for 1,000 years, and then he starts creating. The knowledge comes to him through meditation. Tapas, austerity. Svādhyāya, study of scriptures leading to the self. Svādhyāya, swa means, it's literally, if you just look at the word, it means self-study. But what do you mean self-study? We are already lost, but so that's why you have to use the help of scriptures leading to the self to study. Īśvara-praṇidhāna, surrender to Īśvara. So because with our limited ego, if we keep thinking we can solve everything, we wound up in knots. That's why when you surrender to a higher entity, then you loosen up that open space. And what you will see is all these three are subset of niyamas. Niyamas includes so we're going to see yama, niyama. Yama means literally restraint. Niyama means observances, and that includes shaucha, santosha, and these three. Shaucha is cleanliness, santosha is contentment, being content with what you have, not feeling a sense of lack. So the Kriya Yoga is a subset of niyamas. Okay. And what happens when you practice Kriya Yoga? Samadhi bhavanatha kleshatanu karanatascha. Practice of Kriya Yoga leads to the cultivation of samadhi. Samadhi bhavana. Bhavana means cultivation, literally. Samadhi bhavana means cultivation of samadhi for the purpose. Artha means purpose, for the purpose of the cultivation of samadhi. And klesha tanukaranam. Klesha are these defilements in the imprints. Tanukaranam means making them feeble or attenuating the kleshas. And so the purpose of Kriya Yoga is cultivation of samadhi, one-pointedness of mind, and the attenuation of kleshas. Okay, afflictions. So next we'll come to kleshas. This is the root cause of dukkha. Patanjali defines the 5 types of kleshas, the root cause of the sorrow that we experience in life. Avidya smita raga dvesha binivesha klesha. The kleshas are of 5 types. They are avidya. Avidya means lack of right knowledge or ignorance. Asmita. So we saw the difference between asmita and ahankara. Remember last time? Asmita is the sense of the pure sense of I, without the addition of I'm a father, I'm a mother, I'm a teacher, all that. Then raga means craving. So this is different from ragam. So that is tune, music. Dvesha means aversion. And abhinivesha, literally, the word nivesha means entry. So it is something which has entered every living being, which is what does every living being want to do? Anybody wants to say? We'll see a story also on this. Be
It's
happy.
like avoid suffering.
Be happy, avoid suffering, but basic instinct of every living being is to prolong its life. So abhinivesha is essentially the fear that I will lose the life. So it's associated with fear. Literally, it means the desire to live. That which has entered into every living being is the desire to live. Avidya. Avidya is the lack of correct knowledge. And this is the gold medal winner. So Patanjali is going to say that for all the kleshas, this is the root cause, the wrong identification with the Purusha, between the Purusha and the Prakriti. Avidya kshetram uttaresham prasupta tanu vichinnodharanam. Avidya is the foremost of all kleshas. Avidya kshetram uttaresham. What is he saying? Avidya's place is the topmost, gold medal winner of all the kleshas. And it is the field for other kleshas, whether they are prasupta, which is dormant, tanu, we just saw, tanu means feeble, vichinna means intermittent, vichinna, and udharanam, look at the word he's using, generous, just abundantly flowing. So avidya kshetram uttaresham, and it doesn't here, he just says prasupta tanu vichinnodharanam, and we have to add this, it is the field for the other kleshas, whether they be dormant, feeble, intermittent, or generous. So vichinna, literally we'll see a story also. means one klesha is temporarily suppressed by another. Um, when you are intensely in love, raga, you cannot be angry at the same time. Anger hasn't gone, it is interrupted by the love. When the love fades, anger will return. You love loses, anger will come. So true yoga is not just quieting the kleshas, which is temporary, it is sterilizing them. Remember, in the samskaras we saw, it is making like the seeds. Samskaras, they're like the seeds, making them roasted seeds so that they don't sprout again, making them tanu and eventually burning them. Okay, so let's look at the story of Indra. So, actually, a story of Vishwamitra. So, the story goes, so Vishwamitra was a great rishi. Now, if you, for those who practice asanas, some of you here are familiar with Ashtanga Yoga. There are two poses in the third series. The first two poses, one is the Vishwamitrasana, and the Vashishtasana. Whenever Vishwamitra and Vashishta come, there's always fight. So even in the Mahabharatam, one of the stutis there, Vyasa first puts Vishwamitra and Vasishta. He's glorifying like 8 or 9 rishis. He's talking about Vishwamitra, Vasishta. Then he knew, okay, if I put Vishwamitra and Vasishta, there'll be total chaos and problems. So he inserted another sage between Vishwamitra and Vasishta. So this is the story. Vishwamitra was a great king, and he conquered many lands. One day, when after a battle, he was returning home with his soldiers, he was hungry, so he comes to the hermitage of Vasishta. And Vasishta was very, very kind sage. So Vasishta was one of the forefathers of Vyasa, who, as we saw, wrote Mahabharata, he wrote Bhagavata Puranam, all the great texts he wrote. So Vasishta was a very great sage. And Vasishta, he had a cow called Kamadhenu. The Kamadhenu will grant all desires. Kamadhenu, which means all the desires it'll give. So Vasishta requested Kamadhenu to feed the entire army. And there was huge plates and plates of food. And the king was so impressed by this, but he was greedy. And the king wanted the cow for himself. And then he asked, okay, this should belong to the king, not to a rishi. So let me have the cow. And then Vasishta says, no, it's wrong. It is there here for a purpose. It was given to me during the churning of the ocean. It came and it's mine. You should not take it. It's here to serve people. But he tried to take it by force. And then, because Vasishta was a great rishi, because of his yogic powers, he just, the entire army, he just, like a pack of cards, he just threw them away. And Vishwamitra was so angry. At the same time, he was glorified by the yogic powers. And this is very often happens, right? People who practice asana, pranayama, they have some kind of a radiance, and others they get attracted, so they start practicing asana, pranayama, or meditation. People have this sense of calm, like that. Vishwamitra, now he saw something. He hated Vasishta, but at the same time, Vasishta's qualities were so impressive. He wanted them. So Vishwamitra performed several penances for thousands of years. He ate nothing, spoke to none, and he held his breath. His lust and anger, lust for the Kamadhenu, anger towards Vasishta, they all appeared dead. In reality, they were prasupta, very dormant, and because there was no stimulation. The seeds didn't have the right conditions to sprout. He thought he had conquered them. Then, okay, now comes Indra. Indra, who's Indra? Who's Indra? Indra, what's his title, designation?
Lord of the Devas?
Yeah, Lord of the Devas. He's the king of all gods. But in fact, the worst character in pretty much all the mythology, worst means worst, is Indra. Such a lowly character. He's done the most despicable things. Like if you were like a terrorist, there'll be so many warrants for his head. That is how lowly he is. Anytime when a rishi, so Indra is a post, remember, all these heavens, these are people in the past lives. He has done so much merit that he is now the king of gods. But because he is the king of gods, he becomes arrogant and he does a lot of bad things. And he's also insecure of his place. He feels, oh, if somebody else will take my place. So whenever some rishi is doing great tapas, they're attaining merits, right? He gets worried. The rishi in the next lifetime will take my position. I will come back to the earth. So whenever a rishi is doing a great tapas, he will try to stop that. And how does he try to stop that? This time, he sends one of the celestial nymphs called Menaka. So he sends the celestial nymph Menaka to seduce Vishwamitra. So Vishwamitra is meditating, and then Menaka comes and dances before him. And Vishwamitra, at some point, with that sound and music, he opens his eyes, and then he sees her bathing in the river, and the dormant seed of lust, raga, it exploded into active udara. From dormancy, it becomes active udara. And he forgot his tapas. He married her. He spends 10 years in worldly pleasure. And during that time, a child was also born. The name of the girl is Shakuntala. And the yogi vanished, and this grihastha took over. And after 10 years, he realized he had been tricked. Then his lust vanished, and it was replaced by anger. Oh, I've been outwitted. The lust didn't disappear. It was interrupted by the rising anger. He abandoned Menaka and the child Shakuntala and went back to perform even harder penances, tapas. He starts doing tapas. So the cycle repeats. Next, Indra sends another nymph, Ramba. This time, what happens? Vishwamitra, he did not feel lust. Anger comes, and he turns Ramba into stone. With his yogic powers, he turns her into stone. He curses Ramba to become a stone. By cursing, because of this impulse, he loses all the accumulated merit. Because when you use these powers like this recklessly, all the merit that you attain from the tapas, it's all dwindled, it's gone. And he realized that whether it was his lust or anger, he was still trapped in the field of ignorance. So the 5 kleshas are being shown by the story. Finally, he surrenders his ego, his asmita, and he realizes his true self. And what does he want? He wants to become a Brahma Rishi. Brahma Rishi is the Rishi who has seen Brahman. This is the greatest Rishi. But who should acknowledge that he's a Brahma Rishi? Another Brahma Rishi should acknowledge. And who was that Brahma Rishi? His arch rival Vasishtha. So far, are you guys following the story? Vishwamitra wanted to become the greatest Rishi, the Brahma Rishi. And he's performing all the penances to get those, the glories, the power and everything. And Vasishtha always says, Vishwamitra, the Raja Rishi. He's not saying that he's a great Brahma Rishi. He's telling he's a lower grade. He's a Raja Rishi, the king who became a Rishi. He'll just say that. And that was irritating Vishwamitra so much. One day, what happens? The final story. He wants to kill Vasishtha if he doesn't acknowledge. So he comes prepared. He's waiting outside Vasishtha's hut, and he comes prepared with a stone. When if I'm going to ask Vasishtha to acknowledge me as a Brahma Rishi, if he doesn't, when he's sleeping, I will kill him. So what happens? So he was waiting, and on that moonlit night, Vasishtha was sitting with Arundhati, his wife, and Arundhati asks Vasishtha, her husband, "Oh, Vasishtha, the moon looks so beautiful, the full moon. My lord, the moon is shining so brightly tonight. Is there anything in this world as radiant as the moonlight?" Vishwamitra was thinking, okay, he's hiding behind the bushes and he's seeing the scene. He's thinking Vasishtha is going to praise his own knowledge or he's going to praise the gods. Instead, Vasishtha replied, "My dear, the moonlight is nothing. It is dim compared to the radiant tapas of Vishwamitra. His disciple, his discipline is like a fire of the sun. There is no one on earth as great as him." Vishwamitra was stunned. He stood there. He was waiting to kill the man who, in private, with no audience at all, was singing Vishwamitra's praises. He realized that Vasishtha was not jealous. Vasishtha was simply being truthful. The reason Vasishtha had not called him a Brahma Rishi was not because Vishwamitra lacked power, but because he lacked the peace of mind. His very desire for the title proved that he still had an ego. When the ego dissolves, when he knows that it's just the consciousness, there's no need for this acknowledgement. Overwhelmed by shame, Vishwamitra threw the stone away. He rushed out of the bushes and prostrated at the feet of Vasishtha, touching the sage's toes with his head. He said nothing, weeping in total surrender. So this is the story of Vishwamitra. Very famous story. Okay, now moving forward, avidya. What is, he defines all these 5 kleshas because it's a technical text, so he defines these kleshas like he did the vrittis. Remember the 5 vrittis: vrittaya, panchataya, klishta, and then he defines pramana, viparya, vikalpa, nidra, smritaya. Now he defines avidya. Anitya shuchi dukkhanatmasu nitya shuchi sukhatmakyatira vidya. That conviction that views the impermanent as permanent, impure as pure, sorrow as pleasure, and not the self, the prakriti, not self, anatma. So anatma is the not the self, that's the prakriti, as the self, that's the purusha. This conviction is called avidya. Khyati, this conviction knowledge is called avidya. Yes, Jaffrey, you had a question?
Yeah, real quick, just could you speak more about the sorrow as pleasure piece?
Yes, we're going to come to that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll give these examples. Anitya, impermanent, as nitya, permanent. Viewing the body, example, viewing the body as permanent. Okay. Ashuchi, impure. Ashuchi, the body is very impure, but we think, I'm just so, my skin is so smooth, and most beautiful person, or consuming neatly packaged. We see that when you go to the grocery stores, even the apples look polished. They put some gloss on that. Neatly packaged processed foods, thinking they are pure, as compared to organic apple, which doesn't look, the shape doesn't look perfect, nice. It has all those wrinkles and everything, doesn't look appealing, but in reality that is pure. And the suffering as happiness, consuming alcohol thinking it'll make one happy, smoking thinking it'll make one happy, but in the end, so in the Bhagavad Gītā also, Bhagavan describes yattadagre vishamiva pariname mrutopamam tatsukam satvikam proktam atmabutta prasadajam. That pleasure which doesn't look very appealing at first, but in the end is like nectar, which like vishamiva. It looks difficult and poison, looks like poison, but in the end looks like nectar. And tamasic sukham is exactly opposite, which looks very alluring at first, but in the end causes a lot of distress. That is tamasic. So consuming alcohol thinking you will get happiness, but it's only going to cause sorrow. So that is called, it is the wrong notion. And thinking anatma, not self, thinking that one is defined by one's possessions. Examples of each of this. But you, the self, are so glorious. But now you are trading in for your possessions, your car, all these things which are not you. You are permanent. The self, all these things will go wither away. One day the car will stop working. Your clothes won't look good. Everything, your gold is gone. So that is the wrong association. This is avidya. Now, so I told you this chapter. There is a technical portion, but most of it appeals to the emotion. So that means I can infuse enormous stories. So far we've seen so many stories. One more story, Yaksha Prashna. This comes in the Mahabharata. In the Mahabharata, so who is Yudhishthira? Who is Yudhishthira's father, or the deity based on whom he is endowed with all the qualities? Who is that?
Yama.
Yama. Yeah, Yama, the Dharmaraja. He's not just Yama, he's Dharmaraja. So Yudhishthira is Dharmaputra. He's Putra of Dharma. Yama is personification of Dharma. Yama is also the god of death, and he keeps account. He's absolutely fair. Your next life, whether you go to heaven, hell, next life, everything is determined by Dharma. It is your karma. And that is Yama Dharma. So it's called Dharmaraja. Absolutely fair. So Yama disguises himself as a yaksha to first as a baka, that's why it's called baka upakyatam. So it is yaksha baka upakyatam. So it is first he disguises himself as a crane in a lake, and whoever drinks the water of the lake falls away. So all his 4 brothers, they fall dead. And then finally Yudhishthira comes. So Dharmaraja wants to test his son Yudhishthira. So he says, don't drink that water. And everybody is thirsty. He was going to drink the water. Then he says, look at all your brothers. They drank the water and they're all dead. And Yudhishthira is sad. And then he says, please give back my brothers' lives. He said, only if you answer all these questions, you can drink the water and you'll get the brother's life back. So Yaksha asks him many questions. One of the questions he asks is, what Ashcharyam Kim? That's the question. Kim Ashcharyam, Yaksha asks. And everything is in Anushtup meter. Then Yudhishthira answers, Ahan Yahani Bhutani Gachanti Yama Mandiram Sheshastavaramichanti Kimascharya Mataparam. Day after day, countless beings enter the abode of Yama and they die. Yet those who remain behind desire permanence, act as if they are immortal. What could be a greater wonder than this? So this entire thing is ignorance. So the impermanence from the Yaksha Prakshna. So all that is due to ignorance. Then comes Asmita, that is the pure eye sense. Drigdarshana Shaktyor Ekatmateva Smita. Asmita is the identification of the Darshana Shakti, the power of seeing of the seer, with the Drik, with the Darshana Shakti is the power of the seeing, instrument of perception with the Drik. So Drik is the seer, Darshana Shakti is the instrument of perception. When the seer, power of the seer, is confused with the instrument, power of the instrument, which helps it see, then this is called Asmita. Asmita is the identification of the power of seeing of the seer with the power of the instrument, the mind, which helps it see. So this is the sense thinking, both is one. So this is the identification with the mind. Remember that example we've seen in the first chapter, we've always seen the example of the lake, the pure lake with the reflection. Let me try to get the so that is what is seen in this sutra. So here the mind is this, and the reflection, thinking, this reflection is the seer, that is the mind. The mind becomes light, it shines light, it looks as though it is the one that is creating everything. It tricks chittiva bhavayati chittam, this thing, it looks as though it is conscious, it is sentient, but it's not. So this wrong association is called asmita. So in the previous sutra, Patanjali defined the root cause, avidya. Now he explained the immediate result of this ignorance is the asmita. That is the specific mechanism, how we confuse the self with the mind. Okay, this is just very fine. Asmita and ahankara difference, we've seen. Ahankara is the colored I sense, whereas asmita is the uncolored awareness of I am. Okay, so far everything clear. Now we will go to so asmita happens when these two distinct powers look like a single entity. There are so many examples given in Vedanta. One example Shankaracharya gives is the buddhi and the purusha. The purusha is like the fire, right? That's one of the analogies used for the purusha is the fire, the heat of the fire. The iron, there's a dull iron ball. When you put it in the fire, it glows, but the heat, where is it a property of the iron? No, it is the property of the fire. And this is called borrowed sentiency. The mind borrows the sentiency. This is also called chit abhasa. It's a reflected reflection. That is what we see, reflected consciousness. So the ball is shining. No, the fire causes the ball to shine. The ball is shining. It's a wrong statement. The fire causes the ball to shine is the correct statement. So asmita, there are two different contexts in which where it's used. I've already told this. Sa asmita samadhi. So it's great. It is used as a tool, as an object of focus for stabilizing the mind. When after, you remember, vitarka, vichara, ananda, asmita, after this sense of bliss, the highest level of samprajñata samadhi, when there's no identification, no association of you as a father, mother, teacher, all that, it's a pure I. That's a great way to stabilize the mind. But in chapter 2, from the perspective of ultimate liberation, even this is a wrong association. Patanjali initially used all kinds of things, different anchors to stabilize the mind. Yatapi matadhyanatva. But after some time, it becomes obstacle. Just as a boat is useful to carry to travel across the river, but once you get to the other side, if you keep dragging it with you, it becomes a hindrance. So you have to leave it. From one perspective, it's useful. From the other perspective, it is a klesha, obstacle. In this, in the context of it's an object of focus, asmita is good. It is the highest possible state of the mind compared to identifying with your physical body. The identifying with the pure reflection of consciousness is a massive spiritual achievement. It is the closest you can get to the self while still being in the realm of the mind. The kleshas, therefore, but the klesha, from the highest perspective, this identification, even the purest one, is the fundamental ignorance of avidya at work. It is a final knot that ties consciousness to matter. It must be dissolved to achieve total freedom. Example, it's a rich actor playing the role of a beggar in a play. With such absorption, there's a Hindi song also, Avara Hu, the Raj Kapoor plays that. So I'm poor. The beggar, he plays this role, but he gets so attached to the role, to the character, even in real life, that he starts wearing these rags. And that is the analogy that is given. So this is how asmita is for us. So one more story. This story has I'll do the story and then I'll stop. So this story has a lot of symbolism. That's why I'm telling the story. The story is from the Kena Upanishad, a very famous Upanishad. Once there was a war between the gods and the asuras. Gods, the devas, gods, and the asuras are the demons. So literally asura means one who has not drunk the nectar of knowledge. These are not people, beings with canine teeth, tusk, and all that. No, it is just a gradation of humans. Daivasura Sampat Vibhaga Yoga, 16th chapter. Some people have divine tendencies, some people have demonic tendencies. We see that in people also, right? So that's essentially what it is, to picture, to symbolize. They were viewed as devas and asuras, demons and gods. By the divine will of Brahman, the absolute reality, the gods secured the victory after a long time, great war. However, the gods forgot the source of their strength. They became puffed up with vanity. They have a huge party and they thought to themselves, the victory is ours alone, the glory is ours. We achieved this through our powers. And when they thought so, a yaksha, a being, divine, effulgent being comes in the court, and this effulgent being, he what does this effulgent being do? This effulgent being it perceived the delusion in their minds to teach them a lesson and destroy their pride. It manifests this yaksha. This is actually Brahman. That is the supreme consciousness. God saw this colossal blazing appearance. First they were terrified. They did not know what it was. The gods turned to Agni, who is called Jatavedas, the knower of all things born. And they say, oh Jataveda, go and find out what this great spirit is. So Agni rushed towards us. Then this being, the effulgent being Yaksha, he asks, who are you? Agni replies, I am Agni, the omniscient fire. I know everything. I'm a Jataveda. So the Yaksha says, what power resides in one like you? Agni boasted, I can burn anything. Then can you burn these few straws? And he throws a few straws before him. The Yaksha, the being, throws a few straws. Agni just attacked the blades of grass, the straws, with all his might. He unleashed his most ferocious heat upon it. Yet, try as he might, he could not burn it, not even singe it. Humiliated, Agni ceased his efforts and returned. He returned to the god saying, I was unable to find out who that great spirit is. Then the gods sent Vayu, the wind god, who is called Matharishwan, so one who moves in the heavens. They said, oh Vayu, go and find out who the great spirit is. So they rushed towards the Yaksha. The spirit addressed, who are you? And it says to Vayu. Vayu replies, I am Vayu, Matharishwan, the mover in the skies. Then the Yaksha says, what power resides in you? I can blow away or lift everything that exists on the earth. Then the Yaksha says, can you move these pieces of dried grass? The Vayu attacked the straws. He generated a hurricane, summoned all his strength to lift, but the blades of grass did not even budge an inch. So defeated, Vayu also goes back. Finally, the gods turned to who? The king of gods, Indra. And Indra, so, oh Indra, please find out who this being is. The moment Indra approached the great spirit, the spirit vanished. And it did not even grant Indra the opportunity to be tested. In that spot where the Yaksha stood, Parvati comes. That is goddess, Devi, Shakti, whichever way you want to call. She was beautiful, exceedingly beautiful and radiant, and the embodiment of divine wisdom, Brahma Vidya. Indra approached her with humility and asked, who was that great being, Mata? Oh, mother, who is that great being? Uma replied, it was Brahman. It was through Brahman alone you attained this glorious victory. But you presumed the power was yours, but it was his. So this is the story. Now we'll come to the symbolism. The fire represents the organ of speech. Vak, speech. That's why they say fiery speech. Fire is symbolized. That's how when in Ayurveda, when they treat all that, some of the things with the mouth speech, they tune the body's fire. That's how Ayurveda works. All these things are indirectly connected. So Vak is this organ of speech, and by extension to that, the organs of perception, the 5 jnanendriyas, the 5 sense organs, and Vayu represents prana, the life force, and the organs of action, the karmendriyas, vak, pani, padam, the hands, legs, then speech, and then also the organ of excretion and the reproduction. So it represents life force, and by extension, the organs of action, the karmendriyas. Indra, the king of gods, represents the mind or the intellect. Indra is the king because the mind rules over the senses and the organs of action. And when Agni and Vayu approached, they saw the Yaksha as a gross thing to be burned down. That is Brahman. Their failure was on a gross level. What is the significance of this spirit vanishing away? The moment the mind tries to make Brahman into an object of knowledge, something it can look for, analyze, and name, Brahman disappears. Because Brahman is ever the subject. It can never be objectified. So reality slips away from conceptual grasp. This is the symbol of the mind tries to objectify, but the self, that is actually because it is forever the subject, but the mind thinks it is something else, and it's always going to trying to find the self, but not knowing that it is this power of the mind itself. Okay, so that is the story of the ego, the God's ego's humbled story from the Kena Upanishad. And so with that, I will stop the recording.